Welcome to From the Hill. I'm your host, State Representative Jim Arciero. I hope everyone is having a wonderful new year and had a wonderful holiday. I first want to thank the Westford, Littleton, and Chelmsford communities for coming out to my third annual Sun Santa Toys for Tots event. We raised over $11,000 for the Sun Santa Fund, as well as almost $10,000 in toys with the Toys for Tots program. We had over 300 people at the Franco-American Club. It was a wonderful time had by all, and we made a lot of families and children's holiday season a little brighter. So I want to thank you for that. And today I have District Attorney Marian Ryan, Middlesex County District Attorney. Marian, thank you so much for coming in today for the show. We're going to talk a little bit about your role as a district attorney of Middlesex County, the largest county in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, 54 cities and towns. A little bit about your role as district attorney. You have you're in charge of
258 employees. We prosecute about 40,000 cases a year, ranging from the least serious to the most serious. We are spread across, as you mentioned, what is the largest county in Massachusetts, the 11th largest in population in the country. We have 11 district courts and 2 superior court locations.
Now, you were appointed last year when former District Attorney Jerry Leone moved on and resigned from his post. And I think the governor made a wise decision in appointing you there. You've done some great work. A little bit about your background. How did you get into this? Being in the district attorney's office, obviously you went to law school, cared very much about public safety and the betterment of the public. So,
I'm from Middlesex County, born in Cambridge, grew up in Somerville, went to law school at BC, and as a student was involved in one of the clinical programs at Middlesex DA's office. Loved the office, loved the work, and have been there my entire career, working my way up the office, and was fortunate enough to be appointed by the governor from the position of general counsel when District Attorney Leone left the office last spring.
Now, probably one of the, obviously, the busiest counties having 54 cities and towns. Obviously, it's a public safety agency, and you're in charge of over 200 prosecutors. But on top of that, there's a lot of other programs that are incorporated with the Middlesex County District Attorney's Office. Talk a little bit about those.
Sure. In addition to those cases that we prosecute, which we do well, which we have a strong trial bureau, we have a strong appeals bureau because we're responsible, even once a conviction is obtained, for defending that conviction in the appellate courts as well. But obviously, we are all better off when those crimes don't occur in the first place. So a very large amount of our time and our resources are devoted to prevention and community outreach and education. We've put together programs really across the office in different areas addressing what we see, and they change over time, the kinds of things that are really pressing concerns that we want to get information out to the public, that we want people to be thinking about what can they do, what can we do with them, how do we reach people and prevent those crimes.
One of them, I've read about and worked with your office on is been protecting our seniors.
Right.
And you've been very proactive in working on issues such as that. Tell me a little bit about those programs.
I would. I spent about the last 17 years prior to my appointment being the chief of the Elder and Disabled Unit, so I know these issues well, and we've seen just an astronomical growth. Number one is the population ages, because in Massachusetts, a senior is defined as anybody over the age of 60, so that population is obviously growing. We've suffered some economic downturn, which makes everybody look for resources. And we also have the good and bad fortune in that so many of our seniors are people who have, for instance, real estate that they may have bought at a much more modest price years ago that is now worth a great deal of money. And in addition, many of our seniors are the recipients of some kind of Social Security or other benefits. So they are regularly in possession of cash that someone looking for cash would know that on the first of the month or the third of the month they'd be receiving money. So we've done a number of things. We first of all make an effort to be out in the communities at the senior centers, both to educate the seniors who are able to be there and be with us and hear the program, but also it's our hope that they then go back into their neighborhood and that those friends or neighbors who may not have been able to be there, that they take the information back. They really become ambassadors for us, and are willing to help us in working with elder services, reporting things if they see them, communicating with people about what programs are available. The local police departments as well are wonderful. We've also worked with the area hospitals because what we have found is, while people may be reluctant to walk into a police station or other law enforcement agency and report something, most people, particularly seniors, do get medical treatment. So they'll go to a doctor or they'll go to a clinic and may disclose, or an observation may be made, that sort of thing, that would trigger something coming to us.
Now, if you're, a city or town and someone from the Council on Aging on the board, et cetera, how would they get in touch with you? Would they reach out to your office? Do you reach out to the Council on Aging's office? How often is the program utilized? In terms of throughout the year? And
it's both. We are in contact all the time with the councils on aging, the senior centers, those sort of things. We try to get to every community, at least once a year. We've got 54 cities and towns. We work through trying to do, several of those a month. If there were a particular issue in a community, we might go back there if they were experiencing some particular scam or that sort of thing. We make ourselves available, so somebody at the senior center or the Council on Aging who has a concern can just call. We have a very confidential conversation. They can tell us what the problem is. We can give them some advice, make the appropriate referrals, do all of that. So it's really a two-way street. We will often be invited by cities and towns to participate in, for instance, fall harvest days. They'll have at the senior center. We'll go out and do that holiday type things. Usually in the spring, there's a series of events. We'll go out, have a table, give our information out to the community.
Interesting enough is that there's a whole host of different programs that you've set up since you've become the district attorney. One of them also is tackling the issues of domestic violence. It's something that all of our communities, 351 cities and towns throughout the Commonwealth and throughout the nation, we deal with. We had a few horrific cases in Westford over the last 3 years, but our community, our law enforcement officials, our local leaders, we've come together and certainly look towards ways to take those issues head on and to make sure something horrific like that doesn't happen again. And today you met with a number of leaders dealing with those issues today in Westford. Is that correct?
That's true. And this is a community, as you say, this is a community that has really made something good out of some terrible tragedies. Really have come together, have become very productive, have tackled the problem of domestic violence. I was with that group this morning. It's a wonderful group. Police department's very invested. The town's very invested. And I was very impressed with just the number of citizens, local citizens who, on a very cold and snowy day, made their way out to be a part of that program.
Very proactive, Paul Starrett and Sandy Collins and members of the law enforcement community have really worked with my office as well, with White Ribbon Day, with the Lieutenant Governor's Initiative and the Governor's Initiative to combat these types of issues. Another issue that you've worked on is workplace safety.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about that.
We have a very good and comprehensive workplace safety program that I began in Middlesex County about 4 years ago now. We've educated thousands of people across the county, and it really looks to address 4 types of situations that can occur in a workplace. And when we say workplace, we mean any kind of workplace, whether it be public, private, schools. For instance, we have over 20 college campuses in Middlesex County. We consider all of those workplaces. So we found that there's really 4 situations, one of which is probably the most horrific situation that we all fear, but fortunately a very small in number. Something like, a person just comes in intent on doing terrible, terrible damage and in fact does something like the LA airport, something like that. Awful, fortunately very small in number. Second is when you have people that are legitimately on the premises, whether they be patients, customers, that sort of thing, and they become involved in some kind of a violent episode with people working at that workplace. The third, and again, this is also something that in part I think tied to economics has increased, where you have conflict between employees. Particularly in situations where there might be overtime issues or something, I'm being allowed to do something that economically benefits me and that deprives you of it and that sort of thing. So that's a growing area of concern. And probably the greatest area of concern for us with respect to the workplace are the number of employees who come to work. There's a domestic situation in their private life. And by domestic, I mean domestic in the broadest sense. It may be elder abuse, anything, that is following them to work. And it may be putting them in danger at work. It may potentially involve other employees. It may result in something happening at the
Are there
workplace.
signs, are there like warning signs that you would pick out, or for someone to sort of cipher if that's happening,
Well, but that's what this program looks at. It looks at having people, there are some things that happen that there really is nothing. There's been no prior contact, that sort of thing. But it really targets workplaces thinking ahead about what could happen. For instance, in the case of the stranger coming in, thinking about what safety precautions could we take? Have we taken them all? Do we know if that person showed up at the door and an incident began to unfold, would you or I, as potential employees, know what we were supposed to do? Now is not a good time to go look for the 500-page manual. Do we know how to do that? And then also with the other kinds of situations, to just think ahead. One of the things that we often see in these situations after the fact is, you had a little bit of information, I had a little bit of information, I had no idea you had information. And to get my information and your information alone didn't seem to mean much. Together they would have meant something else. So it's a way to put that, bringing people together to share information, get a bigger picture. So in part, that's what we do with the training after the actual presentation piece. We have people in groups, and we first put people, what tends to happen is with like-minded professionals, and you get one answer to problems. When you mix that up and you put, for instance, the HR people with the security people, with the legal people, you get a very different, richer answer to those problems.
Now, staying on the theme of public safety, staying on the theme of domestic violence, something that started here in Westford with your office was the Cut It Out initiative.
Yes.
This is fascinating.
It's
Tell me a little bit about this.
It's one of my favorite programs. As you mentioned, the Neshoba Technical School has been a wonderful partner with us on this. This program actually began in Birmingham, Alabama in the early 2000s, 2002, I believe. I brought it to Middlesex about 5 years ago, and we have rolled it out in 3 phases. The first phase, and the program is premised on the idea that salon professionals are in a unique situation either to observe signs of domestic violence or to receive disclosures of domestic violence, in part because of the relationship that people may develop over time with their salon professionals. I think in part because of the fact that there's a sort of bubble of safety, if you will, in that moment when somebody's working very intimately on doing your hair or that sort of thing.
In my case, just shaving my head.
And the other is that there are injuries that are often inflicted in domestic violence cases that may be unseen to someone else just in everyday life, but that somebody in a salon professional setting would see
intimately, like a head trauma.
The pulling out of hair is very frequently.
Stress or,
injury to the kidneys or the back that I wouldn't see on you, for instance, but when you're asked to lean back into a sink, would become visible. So we started the program out at Neshoba, training the students in the salon program. Training them, first of all, on the cycle of domestic violence, what that all means, what some indications are, talking to them about some of those injuries. And the program targets really their having an awareness of what somebody may be experiencing. Their number 2 being able to hear somebody tell them something perhaps and treat that with dignity and understand what might be the cycle that this person is going through in terms of, it's frequently not enough to say, I would never stand for that. You should do something else. That's not the best way to get somebody to confide in you. And also to maybe ask something if they notice, hair missing or notice that sort of thing. And thirdly, to help them have information about the local resources, which, for instance, Westford is so rich in, because if you're in a setting and you're experiencing something, it's not that helpful to know there's a resource, in Western Mass. That's just not helpful. It's much better to know what's in your own community. So we did that, and when we do it at Neshoba, which we do a couple of times a year, we do the training piece of the program. Then we also have survivors brought in from the shelters who really spend a wonderful day at Neshoba. They, first of all, are treated to salon services provided by the students. Secondly, we work, our office, along, for instance, with the Women's Legislative Caucus, to gather gently used business clothing that the retail students have set out in a shopping situation so that women can get an outfit perhaps for job interviews, to go to school and advocate for their children, that sort of thing. And then the culinary students provide lunch for everybody who's come out. It is a wonderful day. It is amazing to see how well received it is. I have found it particularly gratifying to see the effect on the students. They rise to the occasion every time. They are wonderful. They treat our guests with such dignity. They are receptive to the information, and we get notes from them afterwards what they've learned, not only about in interacting on that subject, but in giving back to the community. I think that's a tradition we start. They see they can make a difference. The second phase of the program was we went out to the salon schools that train adults across the county. We've trained those schools, and we are now bringing it into the private salons in various communities. So we're growing it a great deal across the county.
In the schools, for instance, at Neshoba Tech, how big is the class? Is it?
We usually have about 50 students.
Okay.
We usually bring together and a piece of it. Sometimes we do a bigger group because we'll bring all the students in the trade programs. So we might have 150.
I find this
students.
fascinating, especially it's a little bit different on my end, I guess, but you think about how intimate you are with certain aspects of your life, and your hair salon and barber. It's like a priest or a rabbi. I mean, you have a lot of intimate discussions. They know about your family. They know about your life. They, as you said, they see things physically on you, might have changed or not have changed. But what part of the training is, for instance, what are you looking for? I mean, you were talking about, as you said, possible, the hair ripped out or something like that. But is there like a hotline to call? Do you call the DA's office? Do you call the police? Or what would you do if you found something peculiar?
The one thing that we want people, and we stress this in the training, we're not expecting them to become social workers or to become police officers or put themselves in danger. None of that is there. It is to be a sounding board for somebody who wants to give some information. Perhaps if they see something, even if a person is saying, no, everything's fine. The salons that have participated, for instance, have agreed to display the kinds of materials that have been developed, discreetly around the salon. Perhaps you might want to just think about this. A lot of times people don't know what resources are out there. Right. The group here this morning has done a wonderful job putting together a book. It's very discreet. It doesn't mention the subject matter on the front, but it's a very comprehensive list of what's out there. So, if you were to suspect that someone had some issues going on, you might just offer them that material. We're not asking them to become reporters to the police. We're not asking them to do any of that, but really just facilitate the getting of information in both
And there must
ways.
be a lot of those questions asked by especially young people.
Right.
Like, I don't want to, dime out my friend or my client or something. How can I do this in such a way that's respectful and also trying to preserve the public safety and preserve, the person's safety in general for, what's going on. Now, what other initiatives are you working on now in the district attorney's office?
We have our workplace safety. We have also developed another great program is we have looked at across the state, district attorney's office are required to be involved in a child fatality review team, which meets quarterly, and it reviews the death of a child under the age of 18 for any reason, whether it be illness, accident, and the goal is to look at what's happening to children and try to determine, are there preventative measures? I mean, it's groups like this, for instance, that brought the legislation about crib slats, things like that. So we have tried now to target every season what we see as the primary causes of injury to children and get information out there. For instance, we had determined that a very large cause of injury to children in the summer months was drowning. And not necessarily as you would expect. I mean, there was some in natural bodies of water, but we had a lot of children that were injured, for instance, in koi ponds and other ornamental waters, fountains, koi ponds that people don't necessarily think about as a danger.
Just playing around.
Yeah, and it's not a lot of water, so people aren't worried. But if a toddler falls in there and isn't taken out, they can drown in that.
And pools and all that kind of stuff too?
Those as well, and also we had a number of drownings among older children. Often boys, 14 to 18, that age, who may not have had the benefit of learning how to swim. They're on an outing with some friends, don't want to say, I don't know how to swim. How hard can it be? They jump in and something goes wrong.
Yeah, that's awful.
So we've put together some great materials. We've partnered with private companies, for instance, one of the pool companies, that as they went about the county opening up almost 5,000 pools, they distributed the materials as well. We made the materials available to every place we could think of where children would be, that there might be water. As well as an interesting piece was we made those materials available at the senior centers, because more and more we see grandparents taking care of children. The rules, just like with car seats or that, things may have been a little bit different when they were raising their own children. We want them, and they don't necessarily maybe spend a lot of time with the kids. Don't just kind of forget how quickly a toddler can get into something, how easy it is for 2 feet of water to be, for a foot and a half of water to be a real danger. So we've put those all out there. We were very gratified by the fact that in the summer of 2013, fortunately, we did not lose any children in Middlesex County to drowning accidents. And we did, in fact, have 2 very successful rescues in the county, in part, we hope based on that training and things that are out there. So that's when you think about the loss of that child, the loss of that potential, the effect on a family, the effect on the community, that's an immeasurable saving for something we were able to do in collaboration with our private partners at really no cost.
What do you see moving forward, and we're kind of winding down to closer to the end of the show, some of your biggest challenges as a district attorney moving forward, in terms of programs across the board? What do you think the biggest challenges are? I mean, you have the largest county,
right.
In the Commonwealth, and oftentimes Middlesex County is looked towards as the leader on a lot of number of issues.
Resources are always an issue. And I think, though, that, as you know, at the legislature, there are any number of very worthy programs competing for, a relatively small amount of money. So the answer is not we can't do anything until we have more resources. That's what's led to my development of some of these programs, partnering with others. It's really the challenge going forward is how can we do more things? How can we reach more people? How can we be involved in more prevention and other types of programs? Doing it with essentially the same resources, very minimal increases. And it really has to come by using resources differently, by partnering with private agencies, and just in across our county, and many times it's thinking about things sort of in clusters and bringing some people together to share things, a group of towns where we might be able to do a program once, that sort of thing. That's the thing we're looking at going forward.
Well, it's, under District Attorney Coakley, under District Attorney Leone, now obviously under District Attorney Ryan, you guys have been, a leader in public safety. You've been looked towards by other district attorneys across the nation for your innovative ideas, your pro-public safety ideas, and you've done a wonderful job.
Thank you.
And I think that the partnerships that you forged here locally, like for instance, domestic violence group you were here in Greater Lowell, have served our communities very well, and we've had a great partnership with you in our office and Senator Donahue's office to make sure that people are safe and people have resources when times get tough.
And that goes both ways. I mean, both you and Senator Donahue have been wonderful to us, working on legislation that's important. We are always welcome up in this area. Neshoba has been a wonderful host to us, for instance, allowing us to host a number of our training programs in the great facility they have there. So then we don't pay to have them in another venue. It's convenient. It brings people to the area. Often you or Senator Donahue are able to participate in those programs with us. It's been a great partnership.
I know, lack of resources. Since I was elected in 2008 was one of the worst fiscal crises we've had since the Great Depression, and we've had to find ways to squeeze monies and resources out of areas you didn't think you could do, and also to reform and find ways to be more effective and efficient. I always ask this of all my guests as we've wind down to the end of the show. What got you involved? You went to law school. You obviously worked as an assistant district attorney, but there's got to be something that inspired you to get involved in public service and to put your name on the ballot, to put yourself in on a role that literally can be a leader and help people's lives a little bit better.
You're right. I really was raised in a family where that was sort of the creed of, if you see a problem, it's you've been given many things. It's your obligation to really address that. I went to law school at BC, which really encouraged that view of, part of having the benefit of a legal education is that, obviously you do it for yourself and to do well, but a piece of that is giving back to the community. When I began working at the district attorney's office, you see that, aside from our outreach programs, the people that we see in the normal course of our prosecution efforts are either people to whom something terrible has happened, or somebody who's a bystander who's had the misfortune to now become involved in something terrible. And it really is a privilege to be able to take somebody at a place that is so traumatic for them, in which they might have suffered a great loss, and to help them through that process, to help make that very complicated legal process more understandable, to help them hopefully get to a place where there's a public safety end as well as some closure and some justice for them on the incident that took place.
Did you think when you were in law school that you were going to be a prosecutor?
Not until I started in the office, no.
Okay.
No.
Did you ever think you would be the district attorney?
No, I did not. I did not.
It's funny how things work out. You never know sometimes.
I'm very fortunate.
I know when I was, when I was in high school, I never thought I would run for office, and that was nothing that I knew exactly I wanted to do until I got to college, and then just was inspired by a lot of different events and getting involved in student politics and coming back and serving your community in different capacities, and it inspires you, and I'm very blessed to be able to do what I'm doing, and I'm sure you are as well.
I am as well. I mean, I have a wonderful staff who do wonderful work, work very hard, and it's a privilege to lead that office.
Well, Marian Ryan, I want to thank you so much, our district attorney for Middlesex County. I want to thank you so much for coming in to have a little discussion today. I know the show goes pretty quick. It's about 25 to 30 minutes, but I hope you come in again soon. And I wish you well and look forward to our partnership serving the town of Westford, Littleton, and Chelmsford in the great Middlesex County. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me. This is great.
My office hours are going to be posted in the Westford Patch, the Westford Eagle, the Chelmsford Independent, the Littleton Independent, and the Lowell Sun. I look forward to having any discussion you would like to have about any of the issues on Beacon Hill or anything in our community, in our district. And I look forward to, actually, we also have posted my email, so if you have any additional questions to myself or District Attorney Marian Ryan, please feel free to send your correspondence. Thank you very much for joining me this afternoon, and I'll see you next time.